Scanning for audio.
Welcome to another Tin Dog podcast. This time and next I'll be talking about the new unit boxed set, which is due out on the 9th of January 2012 in the UK. Don't actually have a release date for the American one, but I'm sure if you listen to Radio Free Scaro they'll tell you. That's fine. Of course you could look it up on the internet. Either way, it consists of 2 stories. The first, chronologically speaking, is part of a 2-disc set. There's 3 discs in all in this box set. The first 2 cover the rather long story with Mr. Jean Pertwee in the part of the Doctor. The second box set, the second part of it, if you see what I mean, is the Android Invasion. That's a Tom Baker story. Both have Unit in them, both have Sarah Jane Smith in them, and it's very nice to see the character development between the 2. This time I'm going to be talking about the invasion of the dinosaurs, also known as the invasion or the dinosaur invasion or whatever you want to call it. And next time, of course, androids. That's fine. So first off, dinosaurs, or kakak, as it says on the front of the Target novelisation. And that's really what we need to discuss first off. You see, it's a story about betrayal, it's a story about honour, it's a story about deserted London. It's got dinosaurs in it, but that's not what it's about. However, if you were to ask Joe Public or any Doctor Who fan really, the thing that they'll remember about this 1970s gem is the rather pathetic puppets. Really, genuinely not good. You could talk about how rubbish the puppets were till the cows come home, but let's face it, it's not something you want to show a new Doctor Who fan as an example of how great old Doctor Who is if all they're going to do is comment on the new special effects. If, however, they're more than willing to comment on, say, characterisation, quality of acting, the pseudo-political nature of Doctor Who, the way that the world is perceived, and possible outcome to environmental dangers, then show them this by all means. Right, for a long time, Episode 1 only existed in black and white form. We all know the reasons why, we don't need to go into it. It was filmed in colour, it was made in colour, all of the negatives were saved, there wasn't a colour copy saved of Episode 1. They've tried, not as successfully as elsewhere, but they have tried, to make this Episode 1 colour once more. The options on the DV consist of you can watch Episode 1 in black and white or colour. That's really nice of them. It's not the most brilliant version in colour. It's not to say it's not watchable, but you do get a distinct feeling that you're watching somebody's VHS copy that they've got down the pub. So if you're one of the new Doctor Who fans who've never experienced the wonders of watching Doctor Who on VHS, taped off UK Gold at 3 AM, watch this. It'll be something very similar. Not to say it's a bad job. It's a very, very, very good workmanlike, but you just didn't have the raw material to work with. You can't blame them. The other episodes, 5 or is it 6 more, are perfect. They're simply perfect. Obviously there's wobbly CSO work. The Whomobile, I'll get back to in a moment. But the rest of it, well, we're back in the world of perfectly thought out plots and perfectly thought out acting. Yes, that is Wang Chiang standing there doing his stuff, but this time as a general. Mike Yates' finest or least finest hour, depending on your reading. And there's a lovely little bit of Benton thrown in for luck. You really, genuinely need to hear the John Levine commentary section. It's a gem. John Levine is the sort of person you really do need hanging around this sort of thing. There is, of course, a proper commentary, and I'll go through all the extras in a moment, because I'm talking about the real thing. So what's it about? I'm sorry I've got so far into the podcast and I've not even told you. Here's what the press release says. Returning to London, the Doctor and Sarah Jane Smith find a city almost completely devoid of life. The civilian population has been evacuated in the wake of an unimaginable event. Somehow, dinosaurs have returned to terrorise the Earth. As the Brigadier and unit fend off increasingly vicious attacks from gigantic prehistoric reptiles, the Doctor investigates just how these monsters are appearing without warning. But when Sarah is kidnapped, the Doctor realises that perhaps even his oldest friends can't be trusted. Dun dun dun! Again, I've added that last bit. I don't really want to spoil twists or turns if you've not seen the story, so I will say it's very, very good. There is a overriding science-y idea of turning back the clock to eradicate the entirety of mankind, to give us all a second chance. A sort of Terra Nova Light, which in respect would be, after seeing Terra Nova Light, because even that's not great. But of course that's actually a variant on a 2000 AD comic strip, which was so much better done. I'll talk about Terra Nova another time, if you insist. I have sat through every episode, and for that I'm proud and feel that I've done my time. Does anyone know if it's coming back, or even if it can? I'm sidetracked by dinosaur chat. On the subject of which, the UK Gold Repeat did say 20 years before Jurassic Park, Doctor Who. God bless it for having the nerve to say something like that. Because it's not Jurassic Park. The effects aren't marvellous. It is great, though. Ignore the puppets. Just don't ignore them. And I know this episode actually has one of the few examples that are visually on the screen of an actual wobbly set. The walls move at one point. You see them. This and Plant the Spiders are the only two that I can find where you actually see or where a set move, and that's not bad for 26 years of Doctor Who. I've digressed so much that my notes no longer make sense. I could talk at great length about Malcolm Hulke trying to create another storyline earlier on that didn't have the time skip, that had aliens trying to make contact, but for me the background for that story sounds far too much like the Claws of Axos. Malcolm Hulke was more of a political figure. He could take various storylines and turn them to his own nefarious ends. He didn't have a master plan. He just saw the world in a certain way and worked that way. Let's face it, all writers do that. So what else do you get on this disc? Let's go through the extras. The commentary, again, perfectly acceptable. Lovely little documentary called People, Power and Puppetry. That's the cast and crew looking back over the making of the story. There's a really odd 2-minute segment from Billy Smart's Circus featuring John Pertwee and again the Whomobile, which I've not talked about yet and I'll come back to. Some deleted scenes. My God, they're dull. There's a reason they're deleted. Now and then. Hooray! I love the now and thens. Here's some footage of what it looked like then. Here's some footage of what it looks like now. There you go. Thanks very much. It's like a government information film. How are these things still being made? I love them. They're so quaint. But, I can't see me ever visiting these places. But don't stop making them. You're so close to the end. An Easter egg, which is what happens when the Doctor meets the dreaded floor manager. Unfortunately, there's so much swearing on this that it actually sounds like a bleeping track because all the swearing's been bleeped out. There's some production information and my lovely subtitles. Ah yes, a coming soon trailer. That's the Censorites. Looking surprisingly good now that it's on DVD. And your usual Radio Times listing. And as I've said earlier, episode 1 available in colour and black and white. Oh, the humanity. Right, one last thing before I sign off. You don't need to talk me about this anymore. The Whomobile. John Pertwee used to turn up and say, "Oh, we could have this in the series," and Barry Letts would go, "That's lovely," and ignore John. John felt ignored. Whether this is true or not, I'll get back to you on another date after I've chatted with John from beyond the grave. However, John decided that he wanted a car, so he went to this fantastic car designer, fantastic in the fantasy sense, and said, "I want something that looks like a Stingray, that looks like a flower hovercraft, or could fly, or could go in water or whatever, and but is actually a car and is roadworthy and legal." The guy said, of course, and John had this thing made out of fiberglass. Now, if you're buying the DVDs, you've seen it in Planet of the Spiders. This is its first outing. It's an earthbound car, and why he didn't use Bessie is beyond me. It's an awful monstrosity, this flying car thing. Ugh. Where it is now, I just don't know. If anyone does know, please email me. Hey, email me about anything you want. I did have some lovely Christmas messages, which is very nice of you, so thank you for that. So yeah, I'll stop talking about this and move on to the androids. But remember, don't look at the puppets. for what they are. Look at them for what they represent. Remember how scary they are in the target novelisation, or what their intent was. Look at it this way. If you're of a certain age, you watched Blade Runner when it came out. You watched it on VHS, as it was originally intended to be shown at the cinema, with Harrison Ford's voiceovers. When you watch the director's cut, in the back of your head you can still hear Harrison Ford's voiceovers, so they've never been truly excised. So, when you're watching Planet of the Dinosaurs, remember how good the monsters were in the target novelisation. See those monsters instead, and enjoy the rest of the British establishment tearing itself apart, trying to give itself a new golden age at any cost. Be seeing you. You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.